Welcome back to KP Unpacked. My name is Jeff Echols. I'm a senior advisor at KP Reddy Company, and this is my opportunity to ask KP Reddy, our CEO and founder, hey, when you posted that on LinkedIn, what were you thinking? I'm joined as always by KP Reddy. He is our CEO and founder, and there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek in there because we have a lot of fun in these conversations. If you're not following KP on LinkedIn, you should be. He posts 2, maybe 3 times a day about what he's seeing, what he's hearing as he goes around and consults with different AEC firm leaders, as he's out on the speaking circuit, as he's writing books, as he's investing in startups that are focused on the built environment. That's what he's posting about. He's posting about the things that he sees, the things that that pique his interest, the things that confuse him. Hey, why do we do this? And all of these posts are sometimes they're meant to stir the pot, certainly, but they have a lot of insights in them. So you should be following KP. You won't be able to connect with him probably because he's usually maxed out on this number of connections there on LinkedIn. But KP Reddy, R-E-D-D-Y, is who you should be following there on LinkedIn. So, hi, KP. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. There's no one here at my house replacing all of my appliances. So, other than the dogs, it's pretty quiet around here.
Yeah. Had to get them to pipe down. California is going all electric. So, they came in and replaced my gas water heater, my gas heater with electric based heating elements. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Learning how to use my induction stove. I'm used to a gas stove. I'm used to kind of commercial kitchen grade appliances because I like to cook. And now I'm dealing with this cooking on a piece of glass.
Well, new adventures in a podcast coming soon. We're going to have KP demonstrating how to cook on a piece of glass. Well, that could be fun. I don't know what we're going to call that. We'll have to get with our producers to come up with a new name for that series. But KP cooking on a piece of glass sounds like an entertaining podcast. As usual, you have posted on LinkedIn and garnered a good bit of reaction over AIA contract documents. So we'll start this out the way that we always do. I'll read. This is a very short post. Mm-hmm. I'll read it, and then you and I can unpack it together. It goes something like this. Industry standards like AIA contract documents could be the single industry artifact that tethers the industry to this is the way we've always done it. All right. So in there, you have included the phrase that I think is the most dangerous phrase in our society today. This is the way we've always done it, or because this is the way we've always done it. But tell me more. AIA contract documents. I've got some thoughts on this. We talked about this before we went live. But AIA contract documents could be the single industry artifact that tethers the industry to this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah. So if we think about, I like to pick on the architects mostly because I know this will come up in our conversation, and you're an architect, so we get to spar a little bit.
Yep.
But unfortunately, you generally agree with me on all these topics, so it's not.
This is true.
It's not really. And
including today.
You were holding up the student book. What's the
Yeah.
Where's that book at?
So this is the Architectural Student's Handbook of Professional Practice. So I teach pro practice at the undergrad and the grad level, and this is generally the industry standard textbook, if you will, for pro practice in architecture school, and it's published by the American Institute of Architects.
And when was it published? Like, when was the original published date?
The version that I have, and I've had this for a while, but the version that I have is copyright 2016. As we're talking, I'll Google to see what the most recent version is.
So, in a world of where the minute you hit print, it's already old, mm-hmm. right? A lot of these standards, the AI contract, they maybe served a purpose. Like, I remember when they were like pre-printed, you bought and then you typed in them with a typewriter, with your IBM Selectric typewriter. And
Google it, boys and girls.
Right. So many things in there. Paper, IBM Selector, like so many old words.
Typewriter, what's that?
Paper. So when you look at that and you say like, well, why did we create all these standards, right? Whether it's the AI contract docs or any other standard, the basic premise of everything is this is a very old industry.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of old people before us, before we were born, probably before those people were born, came up with some standards, and those best practices and ideas came from working on lots of projects and understanding, hey, here's a better way to do it. And they started to go down this road of standardization. So all this kind of institutional knowledge got curated on stone tablets to be put into a book, right? And so then we took all
this book is in fact stone, for those of you who are wondering. Yes.
So then we took these books and then we said, oh, let's make them electronic, right? So they turned into fillable PDFs. Some of it turned into software, right? In my world of civil engineering, we have the green book and the blue book and this book. Like we have all these tables. Some of those formulas got thrown into spreadsheets early on, and those spreadsheets turned into software, right? So the basis of almost all software in our industry is driven by this institutional knowledge that was codified in books.
Sure.
Right. Some of those are great. Like some of them are physics based, right?
Yeah, sure.
They're physics. I don't think the laws of physics have changed yet. Elon Musk is working on that. But as of right now, the laws of physics have not changed. So those tend to be very relevant. But some of the things that we did to optimize for workflows and this and that and standardization are probably holding us back. And I think what happens is when you look at some of these standardized docs that are not relevant anymore, people just kind of go through the motion and it doesn't change anything. They're not thinking about improving. In the government world, for like RFPs, right? We went from SF 254, 255. Now I think it's the SF 330. So I have to submit to the government, here's my experience in the forms by which they've been provided, right? And what does it tell you? It tells you nothing. It tells you absolutely nothing. It's not a decision point. It's a standard, So I think these are the type of things that kind of hold us back because we've created forms for everything, which made a lot of sense when you had to use a typewriter in whiteout to make your corrections.
Well, I think you're right. I mean,
great. The whiteout smelled great, but beyond that, it wasn't really that
well,
helpful.
there's a blast from the past. Whiteout smelled great. To our producers out there, let's make sure that makes it into a quote for social media. Whiteout smelled great. I think when you're talking about those forms, the RFP, that's very poignant for me because in a past life, I did a lot of brand consulting. And, when I was working primarily with engineering firms that did government or maybe DOT type work, which is government work, we talked about this constant pushback against those forms for the RFPs because those forms don't allow the engineering firm, right, from their point of view to stand out, right, to differentiate themselves, nor are they a good mechanism for making good decisions, right, in terms of hiring the appropriate firm for this project or that project or the other project. They're great for creating checklists.
Yep.
So that maybe that's the end all and be all for standardization of these forms. One thing I think is different about the AI contract documents is we've got years and years of learning, and this cuts both ways, right? Why? There are plenty of architects out there that are not using AI contract documents who suffer because they're using documents that don't do a great job of protecting them. Right. And so you do have a set of documents that was at one point well prepared, that I think is a fairly neutral set of documents that represents well all parties in the agreement.
Says the architect.
Says the architect. Sure. Well, it's when the owners wanted to put in indemnification clauses and things like that. But these things are iterated, they're updated every 7 years or so,
Mm-hmm.
which means that a committee goes over these things and tweaks them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what happens? Things like COVID happen. Things, all kinds of things happen. COVID would be a big game changer in terms of things that might influence acts of God and whatever clauses in AIA contract documents. But what they don't catch up with, and we know who's not on that committee.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are not on those committees are people that are looking at innovation, that are thinking about different ways that things could be designed, built, delivered, operated, et cetera. All the different sections, all the different agreement types that are in the contract documents. So are they relevant? Maybe they're relevant. Are they irrelevant? No, they're not irrelevant, but they're definitely not pushing us forward in terms of evolving the business of the built environment.
So let me play back what I heard, right, a little
Yep.
bit. Which, by the way, I don't think you're going to be able to get your AIA ticket this year if you keep talking this way. Get blacklisted. I would love to get a letter from the AIA saying I'm blacklisted from attending any AIA events. That'd be great. I'd frame
I'll
it.
sneak in the back door.
Yeah, be all over LinkedIn. So there's a couple things from there, right? This industry says we're tired of being treated like a commodity. Fill out this form.
Mm-hmm.
The number one signal you're going to get treated as a commodity is if it's a form,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
So I hate that clients are commoditizing us, but here's the form that we filled out. So there's pattern thinking there around like, I don't want to be a commodity, but I want everything to fit into a form.
Yeah.
The second piece that is fascinating, the owner is our client. Mm-hmm. We are going to tell them how they can buy from us.
Yes.
So go into an AT&T store, and when they show you like, hey, here's how we sell service to you. No, that's not what I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. I want you to charge me based on the quality of my call, not the quantity of my calls. Right? Like, see how that conversation goes, right?
Right.
I think that's this weird thing. Like, it's this very similar pattern around the difference is it's AT&T. They can dictate these things. It's their business, right? You can choose to, or you can go down the street. But when the industry writ large says, here's how we're going to do business, and the owner is now being told, like, this is how I want to do business. This is the only way you can do business. It's borderline collusion in a way, right? Like, here's how we're going to tell people how they can do business with us, which I think is just fascinating. The blame the client, we've talked about blame the client scenarios. But I don't think that there's an incentive to do something different that aligns with the owner's difference. And if we say every project is different, we can say those things. But if we're going to default to some forms and contracts that apply to all projects, then every project isn't that different per se. And I'm not just picking on AIA contract documents. There's plenty of standardized documents, which made a lot of sense at a point in time. Pre-technology, pre-AI, pre-everything, that maybe that it's time to relook at some of those things.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, a lot of those selection forms, like your civil engineering brethren that have to fill out forms to be selected for a Department of Transportation project, or even to be on the preferred list, right? That's where, I guess, where it starts. Those forms are coming from the owner, right? They're coming from the client. They're not coming from the AEC side, the architecture or the engineering side. Nor are they part of the AIA contract document. So if anybody out there is listening and you're unfamiliar, it's like there's we are blurring the lines a little bit between some of the documents that we're talking about. Yeah, I think it is interesting. Architects will, or engineers or whoever will say this is the way that we want to work with owners. And I was actually having this conversation. I met a friend for breakfast this morning, and we were talking about the difference between maybe that's not the right way to explain it, but we were talking about, hey, we've got subject matter experts. We've got subject matter experts in our firm. That's fantastic. How does that expertise mesh with what clients want and what clients see as value, right? So in our incubator, so for those of you that are not familiar, we have a startup incubator. In I guess it's two Mondays a month. KP and I sit down with our startup founders, and we work through their issues, and we focus heavily on customer discovery. Right? How many firms in the AEC world are doing customer discovery? Right now, that's not specifically related to contract documents, but if we were to take that idea and go, what about customer discovery as it relates to AI contract documents, which are much to AIA's celebration, are essentially the industry standard documents. A lot of those departments of transportation that have their forms would likely push the AIA contract documents. A lot of colleges, universities, health networks will insist on AIA contract documents as their agreement basis. But when those committees get together to discuss the next version, whatever the next version of AIA contract documents is, seems like it ought to be coming out in a couple of years from now. They're not going through a customer discovery process before doing that.
Nope.
They're looking at, theoretical protections, but they're not looking at how can professionals serve clients better. Right?
Yeah.
That's nowhere in the equation.
Yeah.
Which I think is partially to your point.
Yeah. How often do architects get sued?
Fairly often.
Do they?
Yeah.
Like, do they get judgments against them, or do they just fix their work?
Most of it is settled outside. Right. That's why you have your professional insurance. Right. And in my experience, most of the this is kind of a strange little tangent to this discussion, but most of the time when professionals get into litigation or mediation, I guess, it's when they abandon the documents. There's so many people that use AI contract documents that don't actually know what the documents say, don't actually follow the documents. And I think that's an oddity of this as well, right? Hey, we've got these documents. They've been the standard, like you said, since typewriters or before, since stone tablets. But many aren't actually educated, don't actually know what those documents say. Now, you may be at a firm that has a specialist in your firm, or maybe even in-house counsel that deals with these documents. But my guess is that most architects, engineers, contractors, back in a past life, when I was doing design, build, development, and I'm working with a subcontractor one day and say, here's the agreement. And he looks at it, and it's one of the standard AIA contract documents. There were more, I had this figure in my head at one point. There were more pages in that thing that he had to sign than he was going to get paid. Like, if you were to sign $100 to each one of those pages, he wasn't getting paid that much to do his work, but he had to sign this, this 32-page document. And he looks at it and he goes, this is absurd. He lays it on the hood of his pickup truck, flips to the back and signs it. Doesn't read any of it. Right. So there's that reality of it, but there's a good bit of I don't think there are that many cases that go to court, but there's a good bit of dispute that's handled.
It gets resolved, right?
Mhm.
I just think, I hear about all these liabilities, and it feels like a lot of the small liabilities, right? Like, oh, we didn't, we missed something on a set of drawings. Somehow kind of gets figured out between the architect and the contractor. It's like incorporated in a change order or what, like, like
Somebody pays for it.
I mean, the owner pays for everything, but, generally speaking, but it doesn't feel like, when people say, oh, contractors take on so much liability, I haven't seen a lot of contractors go out of business.
Mhm.
I'm sure they exist, and of course I deal with the
Yeah.
different echelon of contractors, and I'm sure there's some smaller contractors that mess up, but any contractor of size, right, that name brands, I've never heard of like one of these big firms, big construction companies going out of business. They all seem to be doing okay. They're,
Yeah.
I mean, sure, maybe they have to like settle some stuff here and there, or whatever. I'm sure they have their levels of insurance and all that, but it doesn't feel like as much as people, I would say, as much as people talk about liability in our industry, I don't feel like I see much evidence of detrimental liability in terms of how many architects lost their license last year, how many like how many architecture firms got and construction companies and engineering firms like went out of business
Mhm.
last year. And I was talking to some private equity people that are, buying these firms and like because they're buying liability too. And I was like,
Right.
how often do you not do a deal because there's too much liability on the books? And they're like, never. We still did the deal.
Mhm.
The only liability we care about is receivables liability. A lot of the professional liability is kind of maybe a little bit exaggerated.
Well, maybe it is. I mean, maybe it's driven by, we're not gonna make any friends today. Maybe it's driven by the insurance industry. I mean, I would agree. I mean, most of it, yes, in a way, the owner always pays, but, I've seen instances over the course of my career in firms where, the architect ends up ponying up. Maybe it's the deductible for their insurance, or maybe it's
Right. So it is.
$20,000 or something to pay for moving a wall, or, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever those things are. But, that liability, that legendary liability is generally catastrophic things, right? We
Mhm.
we actually we had an example here in Indianapolis. It was a catastrophic thing, right? It was a parking garage collapse. I
Right.
mean, that's real, right?
Mhm.
But that's pretty rare.
Right.
Um, yeah, it,
I've
it
always heard
it's
like most of this stuff has to do with like leaky buildings. It's mostly like water
oh
related.
yeah. I if I had to guess it, I
Majority of stuff tends to be water
mhm,
related, right? Like, oh, it leaked.
yeah, yeah. If I had to guess, that would be a huge percentage.
And then when you look at
Right.
those, it's like, was it designed poorly? Was it installed incorrectly?
Mm.
Or was it the product? Was it the curtain wall manufacturer's fault? It was manufactured in
Mhm.
there's so many people that they just kind of does this, right? And of course,
Yeah,
a jury of your peers doesn't understand physics.
right.
If only they were our peers. And you end up with a bunch of people on it. So it's like, okay, we're not going to jury because like nobody will understand this at all.
Right. Right.
And if anything, they might blame the architect because they're too fancy. They're the fanciest people in the room. They'll probably blame the architect. I mean, that poor contractor, he's just one of us. Like
Yeah.
he couldn't have done it wrong. Like it's always trying to go after the little guy. Like who knows what happens in a jury trial?
Yeah. I don't know how many of them. So I was involved years ago. I was involved. Um, for those that are not aware, if you have like a accessibility, American
ADA.
Disability Act, ADA, if you have an ADA violation, you're sued by the United States of America.
Hmm.
So got into a situation um, like that years ago, and as it turns out, the how much can I say? It was a multi-family project, and many of the multifamily developers have their own in-house construction managers, et cetera, that are, they're kind of charged with constructability and things like that. And somebody in-house
Yeah, built it wrong.
was learning, Revit, I guess it was, and they actually changed one of our drawings.
Mm-hmm.
They changed a certain detail that produced an ADA violation, and we were eventually dismissed from the case.
Mm-hmm.
It was originally, it was brought against us. We were dismissed from it. Of course, they name everybody,
Yeah.
right? Everybody in the county gets named,
Yeah.
but the developer, the multifamily developer, did pay a hefty
Mm-hmm.
hefty fine. And then what's interesting in those types of cases is once they find one, they go back and look at
Mm-hmm.
all of your
By the way,
projects.
there are lawyers that just specialize in this. I have some friends in
Yes.
multifamily development. There are
Mhm.
lawyers that all they do is like look at, I mean, because they know multifamily is a huge violator. Because
Mhm.
even if it's designed correctly, this is all stick built stuff. It's not like the most
Mhm.
talented contractors in the world. And
Right.
so for them to like violate, it's not, oh, let's just move it this way a little bit. Like they do all this on the
Yeah.
fly
Yep.
stuff. Like let's just move it this way. So yeah, that was like a whole growth industry for the legal profession.
Mhm.
But the
Yeah.
good news is like there's nobody at the ADA right now because they've all been dosed out. So I don't have to worry about that anymore.
So for all of you that have wanted to develop multifamily projects, now is the time.
Right. Go now. Go now.
Go quickly. You can ignore all the threshold details out there. Um, yeah. So, but the idea of liability, I mean, is it real? Yes. Is it overblown? Maybe. Um, I am often a thesis advisor, as I am this semester, and most of the time, what happens is that somebody is wanting to not only do a project that has to do with design, but they want to do something with a business model, and
Mhm.
often architect is developer business model. So I get tapped, and I've got a student this year, and he's doing a fantastic job. I love what he's doing. I love the way he's demonstrating what he's learning and everything else. And one of the things that has struck me this semester is we have all these like mid-semester reviews, is he has other advisors that are focused on the design side.
Mhm.
And those advisors have said out loud that they do not understand. They do not understand the architect as developer business model, so they're not going to comment on that. Right. And my point is, this is one of the problems, right?
Mhm.
When you don't understand your client, when you don't understand the owner and what matters to the owner and how the owner's pro forma, or even what a pro forma is, there's a problem,
Yeah.
right? How do you serve clients that you don't have any idea how they operate or how they derive value or anything like that? And so in working with this particular student on this project, we go through these things, and one of the biggest things that is misunderstood or not understood or not even realized about that business model is that the reason people shy away from it is that they don't understand risk.
Mhm.
They don't understand, and we're talking financial risk at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Maybe not the same necessarily as AIA contract documents, but the documents cover that.
Yeah.
They
But
don't
I think,
understand the mitigation of risk.
but I do think that when people talk about AI is going to disrupt architecture, and yeah, maybe right. But I think what AI is really going to do is move a lot of architects going into the architect developer business
Mhm.
because when you're an architect for a fee, then it's about production of drawings and time and all that. Now, if I'm an architect as a developer, nobody's got timesheets. There's no timesheets. It's like, get it done, right? Get it done.
Right.
Here's the economics of it.
Mhm.
And we need to make X, right? And our risk is Y. We need to make X and let's run. So I think that is if you think about AI on its own, like, well, we're going to build less hours or what, like that efficiency to what benefit? Efficiency to the current business model? That's really not that helpful. Efficiency to be in the architect as developer business? 100%.
Yeah. Efficiency to the current business model is commoditization.
Right.
Right. That's, I have this conversation a lot with different architects. Again, that being my background, and there's an architect that for years he and I have been talking about this, and I'm like, you have to get away from the hourly business model. He's one that he charges everything hourly.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get away from that. Well, I can't get away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, here's the thing. If you're charging hourly, then you're penalized for efficiency. You're penalized for doing your job better. Because if you charge $150 an hour, or $200 an hour, or $400 an hour, and it used to take you 10 hours, and now suddenly you can do it in 8 hours, you got better and you lost.
Mm-hmm.
So that efficiency to the current business model is actually a detriment to the business model.
Mm-hmm. So I know you like teach some stuff, but is there a defined model? Like, I'm an architecture firm and I want to be a developer. Architect as a developer.
Mhm.
Like, is there a playbook? Is there a model? Is it more like people are just kind of figuring it out?
There are a couple people out there that are sort of the thought leaders in the space. One famously is Jonathan Siegel out in San Diego.
But like my dad
Um,
worked for John Portman, so
yeah,
that was one of those.
right, right. John Portman is one. Siegel um, is one. James Petty is in New York. Siegel and James Petty both have books. One is architect and developer. The other is architect as developer, and I can never remember which one is which. But they have kind of created the playbooks.
Mhm,
Um, Jonathan is 2 decades down the road further than James Petty is. Just
mhm,
experience and age and everything. He is currently. I haven't talked to him in about a year now. But last we talked, he was getting ready to self-finance. Okay, this is an architect,
mhm.
right? He's getting ready to self-finance a 100 and some odd $1 million project.
Yeah.
And he's
You should
done
have
that,
yeah. I think it's an
over a
interesting
year.
topic. You should have one if you can get him on the pod, you should have him
Oh, we can definitely get him
on.
on the pod. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think in a world like we've gone to a whole nother I think we could probably edit this pod into 3 pods.
Mhm.
But I do think in the world of like, what does AI mean for the profession? I think this is what AI means for the profession, right? Like it means like, what is the net new business model? Everybody's like, oh, should we do lump sum now? It's like you're still in the same construct, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But if you can tell me I can use AI to design a building in the 10th of the time, then you should be a developer, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the biggest area and oh, by the way, oh, I can use AI to adapt and change as the project needs change faster, right? I'm not having to redraw everything or whatever. AI is I mean, I think like AI could be the number one catalyst for moving into that model.
Yeah, that's interesting. What AI means, what AI has to mean is net new.
Mhm,
Right, and those examples that you use, those are interesting because, still thinking about the developer model, one of, if not the biggest, uh, line item, um, cost liability items for the developer is interest carry,
mhm.
right? And so speed is everything. That's
Yeah,
architect wants to know, why does this developer keep pushing the schedule so much? Well, because every day is costing him money. So if you do it faster, it's it's more margin, or maybe it's the difference between
winning and losing.
profitability and not. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's a really good point. If you can, then maybe you do move into
mhm,
into that model. And I think the big point is what's the new value proposition?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the documents. Right. You got the AIA contract documents. That's one type of document that we've been talking about. Those are protecting things that are evolving faster than they ever have, and the documents are only being updated about every 7 years or so. I'd have to fact check that if you're listening to this. I think that's accurate, but it may not be. So they're certainly not keeping up with changes in emerging technology.
Not at all.
But then you also have value propositions, which are back to one of the things that you originally said, right? What is it for your owner? What is it for your client?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I try to teach all the time, is the thing that you design for your client is not really the important thing. That's not the value proposition. The value proposition is, what does this thing that you're designing for your client allow them to do?
Mm-hmm.
Sell pizzas, showcase art,
So
run data centers,
yeah,
whatever the project is.
yeah, it's kind of funny. I had a conversation this morning with somebody, and they're like, because pickleball is very popular with old people, and apparently young now. It's not actually a sport; it's an activity. However, they were
I have
talking
yet
about.
to see a pickle on the court, by the way.
I've yet to see an athlete on the court. Not
Fair
that I'm
enough.
an athlete. I'm just saying in general. But I do think, like, we're having this conversation, like, this drainage problem and redesign a pickle court. I was like, they're not buying a pickleball court, right? They're buying the availability to play as much pickleball as possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if every time it rains, you can't use the pickleball court,
Yeah, that's a great example.
right? That it's not about the court. It's
Mm-hmm.
about the life I want to have. I want to play as much pickleball as possible. Not me. Don't
Yeah.
quote me. Don't take that quote out of context. But it's one of
Producers
those
need to
things
put that into a social media post.
where KP loves pickleball. It's really more about that, right? It's really more about the quality of life and availability. And if you want us to raise the pickleball court 1.5 feet, it increases your quality of life if that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the court. It's not
Yeah.
about the court. It's about playtime. So I
Right.
do think it's a lot about that.
Yeah. I like that example, because the value proposition transcends the thing that you're designing.
Mhm.
Pickleball court, museum, data center,
Yeah.
whatever it is. The value proposition is, what does this allow
Mhm.
to happen? And sometimes it's a quality of life thing, and sometimes it's a purely economic. Hey, we can charge,
Mhm.
X for whatever.
Yeah.
Or we have more uptime, or we can be open longer, or we have more seats, or whatever it is. The value proposition transcends the thing that you're designing.
100%.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
So we have two
now that
quotes.
we've solved everything. So
We solved everything, and we have two great social media quotes. Whiteout smelled really good, and KP loves pickleball. Those are your takeaways from our conversation today. But let me go back. Let me reset your post for those of you that are listening to this in the future. It's from about March 19th, I guess, 2025. It goes like this: industry standards like AIA contract documents could be the single industry artifact that tethers the industry to, this is the way we've always done it. I actually agree with that. I think KP was wanting an argument, but he's not really going to get an argument from me on that.
by the way, Jeff had a great idea for our next mastermind group. You should
Okay.
have t-shirts that say, that's the way we've always done it, with like a slash through it.
Okay. We could do that. Coming soon. Our next one-day mastermind event. Our next quarterly in-person mastermind event is in Atlanta on May 20th.
Yep.
That's something, if you're listening to this and you would like to know more about what we're talking about, you'd like to dig deeper into things that we talk about here on the podcast, you'd like to connect with innovation leaders, we have two currently, as we're speaking, we have two innovation leaders mastermind groups. And so the folks in those groups are generally director of innovation, chief innovation officer, other folks with those types of roles. We have a construction technology leaders mastermind group. We have a early and mid-career mastermind group, soon to come our owners group and our sustainability group and our AI on the keyboards group. All those are rolling out soon. If you'd like to connect with the type of people that participate in those discussions, in those groups, you should come to Atlanta. Yeah. The registration link will be in the comments here, wherever you're seeing this, YouTube or
you know what, Jeff?
In the show notes.
I'll tell you, like our marketing team does a great job. Sometimes I feel like they beat around the bush, right? Just they're not as direct as they keep trying to get my ethos, but here's my belief on our mastermind groups. I mean, we've been doing it for almost a year and a half now. It's evolved. I think if you are in the AEC industry and you are ambitious, not joining our group is career limiting behavior. I mean, that is where it's going to. I mean, when I have a call later with CEO of an ENR 50 company, and he's like asking me, like, hey, where are all the talented people hanging out? Like, what should I be doing? I mean, it's becoming like one of those things. It's starting to become one of those things. And I really do. I mean, if you're not ambitious, then you can unfollow me on LinkedIn. But if you are ambitious and want to drive change in this industry, I think it's literally like, I mean, I'm just seeing the fruits of our labor. I mean, because getting these things going, or as you know, I don't have to tell you, it's very, very hard. You know, and I think the way I'm seeing the collaboration and how people are working together and how they're, adopting things faster and mitigating risk together, and it's become a very interesting group. And I think, unless you lack ambition, then I don't know. Like, I don't know how else to stress it. I can't stress it enough. And now that we have owners in the mix, and the owners are telling me, like, I only want to meet with the most innovative firms. Like, and I think we haven't formally announced it. People can listen. It's a little Easter egg here. Like, I think we're doing an industry demo day, because all these owners, these 50 owners, have come to me and said, we never get to talk to AE firms outside of the procurement process. And once we're in the procurement process, we don't get to, we have to follow our process. We don't get to have certain conversations and all that. So it's could be a really interesting opportunity for some of these AEC firms that are doing highly innovative things to pitch some of the biggest owners in the world. And I don't think that's ever been done. And so once again, like, I think we're doing the right stuff. It just doesn't seem like we're getting through to people necessarily. They'd rather go to some dumb event where there's a bunch of people on stage schlepping whatever thing that they're schlepping, or go be a power user at a user conference. This is not a user conference, by the way.
It is not. I mean, I'm bullish.
Looking for tips or tricks, get on YouTube. I don't even know why you go to a conference.
Yeah. I'm bullish on mastermind groups. I mean, when I first presented the idea, probably 2 years ago now, since we've been running this for a year and a half, I mean, this is a mastermind group. What is a mastermind group? It's a group of people that to the person all have growth mindset, all show up to give and take away. And like you said, they're learning together, they're developing together, they're figuring out how to be more innovative together, and the group think amplifies and accelerates the growth. And I don't know that I know a better way to describe it. You think about whatever it is that you're struggling with, there's somebody else, probably multiple somebody else's in that mastermind group that are struggling with the same thing. and you all get together and you have that aha moment together, and you all overcome and accelerate your growth together. And I mean, that's what happens in these groups.
Yeah. And I think it's different too. If you want to become a better architect, this is not the place. Your firm,
Yeah.
plenty of places to go. If you're an architect, you want to be a better architect. If you want to be a better business person, if you want to like understand the complexities of technology, like if you want to kind of use that part of your brain that you're maybe that's not getting developed at your firm or through the alphabet soup of organizations, I really think it's really that. I mean, I get the feedback from folks. They're like, man, I don't know where I would have even learned this, right? Do they learn this at Harvard and MBA school? Or I'm like, no, I don't think they do there either. Like you just learn things that just are kind of not written down anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to learn how to become a better architect, reach out to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll point you to any number of leadership development programs that are out there. I've started some, so I can definitely help you with that. That's not what this is. It's funny you say that, because you and I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months ago, something like that, we were talking about, we launched the early and mid-career mastermind group, and part of the impetus for that was my background is architecture, and I don't do architecture. Your background is civil engineering, and you don't do civil engineering. And we're not really interested in teaching people to be a better architect or a better civil engineer. We're interested in supporting the people that want to do something else, that look up to the innovation leaders or the construction tech leaders, or want to be on the front edge of innovation for the built environment. And that's what that group is for. And I love that group, because we've got, on any given week, we'll have 20 or more people showing up, and they ask fantastic questions of our guest mentors. And my background is structural engineering, but what I do is this, and I love it. Right? I love that introduction, because it's your introduction, and it's my introduction, and it's the introduction that really, if we look at the change makers, it's the same introduction that all the change makers have.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. I love it. All right. Fun conversation today. Again, everything that we've talked about that deserves a link will be in the show notes, wherever it is that you're consuming this video or audio. As you listen to this, post your comments, post your questions, post your recommendations for other things for us to talk about, other resources, and we'll make sure that we gather up all of those comments and incorporate them in the future. So KP, thanks for joining me today.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Back again next week with another edition of KP Unpacked. Thanks, everybody.